Hi, welcome back to the course. Here, Professor Kamble are here, and our today's topic is absorption of water. In the last lecture, we have gone through the structure of cell and what are the important organelles, their structure, and important functions. So, in the absorption of water, as we know, for the all type of the metabolic reactions which are happening in all type of the cells, it require an important substance, or it is an one of the important medium through which number of reactions are happening, and that is required matter is that water. Okay, so in the absorption of water, number of organs are included there. Okay, in which roots are there. In the roots, again, actually involvement of the part is there, that is root hairs. Okay, in the root also, and we are able to check and particular structure is there in which different parts are there, and they are also having a particular role in the absorption of water. Then different regions, parts of root, and then what are the pathways? Okay, pathway means what? The way through which the absorbed water in the root region is coming up, sent up to the tip portion of that particular plant. And this is mainly happening through different pathways. And what are those different pathways that we will discuss? Okay, so absorption of water, that is through the root, in which mainly root hairs are involved in the absorption of water, and from where the movement of water is getting started. So in the higher plants, water is absorbed through root hairs. Those root hairs which are in the contact with the soil water, where a root hair zone is there, and from where the water is got absorbed. Okay, and root hairs are what? These root hairs are hair-like structures. Okay, our hairs are there, no, like hair-like structures or prolongations. Okay, those prolongations which are present at the tip of the root, and these root hairs are nothing but the epidermal layer of the cell. Okay, these root hairs are actually an epidermal cells, elongated epidermal cells through which absorption of water is takes place. And important thing is that this absorption of water is happens. Okay, in the absorption of water, as we discussing that these root hairs, okay, here we are able to check all these are root hairs. Okay, all these prolongations are there, no, this hair like are called as a root hairs. Okay, this is actually the part of the root. Here the branches of these roots, and at the every branch, at the tip of every branch, there is an hair like structures which is called as a root hairs, which are actually involved in the absorption of water. And these root hairs are made up of permeable and consist of pectic substances. Okay, so that there is a strong hydrophilic in nature. Okay, they are in the strong hydrophilic in nature, which helps in the absorption of water. Okay, so here these are the important parts of the root. Okay, here it is roots, part of the roots. So in which different root regions, first one is there, that is meristematic region. First one is the meristematic region, second one is the region of elongation, and third one is there, that is a region of maturation. Now what is meant by this meristematic region or region of elongation or maturation? So here meristematic region means what? Actually it is an uppermost part of the root where meristematic cells are there, and actually cell division is happening in that particular region, which is called as a meristematic region. Here we are able to check this meristematic region, okay, region of root tip at which we are able to check the meristematic cells, and this particular area is responsible for the cell division and growth, okay. And because of this region only, the length of that particular root hair is getting increased, and that's why the length of the roots is getting increased, and they are going deeper in the soil area, soil region, okay. Second region is there, that is region of elongation. This region of elongation is there, which is behind this region of cell division or region of meristematic cell, okay, where increase in the size through food and water absorption is takes place. And as this elongation is happening, they push the root through in the soil, okay. Actually this elongation is happening, and because of that these root hairs are getting deeper into the soil. Third region is there, that is the zone of maturation. Now zone of maturation means what? Actually the matured, this area can be called as a matured area, where we are able to check the root hairs or an particular system is getting developed, particular cells can be observed in the region of maturation. For example, here and specific cells, for example epidermis, cortex, vascular tissues, okay, these are the cells which are mainly present in the root hairs, or the, it is an important part of the root structure which we discuss in the next slide. But for now remember that zone of maturation is the zone where actually specialized cells are getting formed, and it is present behind the region of elongation. Now the important point is there, that is the root cap, okay. Here this root cap is there, and this root cap is the root's outermost tip to protect the root meristem, okay. Here it's very it's very quite sensitive part is there, so this root cap is playing an important role of saving this meristematic region. And then the root hairs function is to increase the root surface area and absorptive capacity. Means what? Actually in this root region root hairs are there, and as many as root hairs present on that root, that much water absorption can be takes place, or it is directly proportional to each other, okay. If the root hairs are less in number, then water absorption is also decreased, like that, okay. Moving on to the next slide. So here important structure of and typical root, okay, in which we are able to check the particular area of a root section, and in that root section we are able to check different layers of the specific cells, and which are having a specific role in absorption, in which, so first layer which we are able to observe here, which is epidermis, okay. Then endodermis is there. Okay, first of all look at here, this is epidermis, okay, this green color part, outermost part, outermost layer of the cell, that is called as a epidermis. Then in between these yellowish colored cells are there, which is called as a cortex. Again, inside here we are able to check this red colored layer, which is called as endodermis. And in the endodermis, again 3 to 4 different cells we can check. Here it is pericycle, then primary xylem, primary phloem. Xylem means actually water, absorbed water goes through this xylem area, xylem layer. Then phloem is there, which is responsible for the absorption and movement of the food material. Then here it is cambium layer is present. Okay, so this is the structure of a typical root which we can observe in any type of the root tissues. Okay, so here it is root hairs, and we have taken a section of the typical root, and in which these are the standard cells or structure which can be seen in majority of the plants. Now, what is the role of these different cells? So first of all, epidermis, which is the outermost layer. Epidermis, it is outermost layer of the cell. These cells are responsible for absorbing water and minerals dissolved in the water. Okay, these epidermis cells are there, which are actually performing and function of absorption of water, and they will send it to the epidermis, cortex, and then endodermis to the xylem. Okay, cortex. Now this yellow colored part, which is cortex, these cells are involved in moving water from epidermis to the vascular tissue. Vascular tissues are xylem and phloem, which is called as a vascular tissues, and in storing of the food. So this is the function of this cortex layer. Okay, what is the functions? So transfer of the water from epidermis, epidermis to the endodermis, and then primary xylem and phloem, and also its store and food material. Now the next important layer, that is vascular tissues. Okay, these vascular tissues are the heart of this absorption of water and food material, because these are the cells which are involved in the movement, means transport of this water which is absorbed by epidermis to the upper tip region of that plant. Okay, so the vascular tissue is located in the center of the root and conducts food and water. Now moving on to the next slide, that is path of water, water movement in the plants. Okay, whatever question it may be. Okay, what are the different pathways of water, or what are how the movement of water is takes place in the plant cell, or from root to tip region. Okay, so all these are covered in this particular, in which how the movement of water is takes place, in which again there are 3 different pathways or important pathways which are found in majority of the plants. So first of all, first pathway, that is called as a apoplastic pathway. Second one is symplastic pathway, and third one is transmembrane pathway. Now, first of all, apoplastic pathway. Okay, this through in the apoplastic pathway, water never cross the cell membrane or membrane of any cell. Okay, here we are able to check. Okay, here this highlighted area is indicating the movement of water in 3 diagrams. First diagram is for apoplastic pathway, second one is symplastic pathway, and third one is transmembrane pathway. In the first pathway, that is apoplastic pathway, water never enter into an cell. Okay, so these are the cells, but water is always going through this cell wall. Okay, we are able to check here. It is going through this cell wall without crossing any membrane. Water never moves into the cell. It only goes through this the cell wall of the cell, and this is the pathway which is apoplastic pathway. Okay, and in this apoplastic pathway, the majority of the water Okay, whatever water is getting absorbed, out of which the majority of the water is received by this cortex region, okay, or the cortex cells, and these cortical cells which are loosely bound. Okay, this cortex region in which we found, which we saw in the last slide, that is loosely bound, so there is no resistance. Okay, but the movement of water in root beyond cortex is apoplastic pathway is blocked by the capsarian strip present in the endodermis. Okay, up to the capsarian strip. Okay, here this red colored line is there. Okay, this red color line is capsarian strip. Okay, up to that water can move through the apoplastic pathway and it can reach up to this endodermis where this capsarian strip is present. Okay, after the capsarian strip, water is unable to move or solution is unable to move through this pathway. Okay, so from where, from that particular region, water is changing its path. Okay, that is from apoplastic to the which can, we can say, symplastic pathway. Okay, now what are the things happening in the symplastic pathway? So the movement of water from one cell to other cell through the plasmodesmata is called as the symplastic pathway. Means what? Here we are able to check these openings beside each and every cell. Okay, here it is, one more here, another is here. Okay, so the whatever movement of the water is happening, which is through these openings of the cell, that is called as a plasmodesmata, and through this plasmodesmata, whatever movement or path of the water is there, that can be called as a symplastic pathway. Okay, and this is mainly because of the plasmodesmata, which is internally connected to besiding cells or cells which are present in nearby. Okay, and the third one, that is transmembrane pathway. Now what is meant by this transmembrane pathway? So here in plant roots, the water movement from the soil till the endodermis is occurring through apoplastic pathway, that is only through the cell wall. Then because of this capsarian tube, the pathway is got changed, that is symplastic pathway. And also again, when there is an pressure of this endodermis and water is unable to move at that time, because because of this the force which is exerted by the endodermis, water is forced to move through the cell membrane. Okay, here first of all the water can move through the cell membranes, actually through the cells, not through the plasmodesmata or not through the cell wall. It actually enters into the membrane of the cell and it goes along the tonoplast of the vacuoles which are present in the plant cell, and this pathway which is going through the plasma membrane of the cell is called as a transmembrane pathway. Okay, which is also one of the important pathway through which movement of the water is happening. Now in this particular topic, that is absorption of water, structure involved or the structure of typical root, then different pathways of the water movement or pathways of water in plant. Okay, so these are the three important pathways. Kindly remember all these important points. Okay, again the next another important point is there, that is mechanism of water absorption. Now in this mechanism of water absorption, actually in the mechanism we are going to discuss about actually what are the different pressures, what are the different factors responsible for this absorption of water. Okay, in which turgor pressure is there, diffusion is there, DPD, that is diffusion pressure deficit is there, active absorption and passive absorption. Okay. Now, in the absorption types of the absorption, there are two types, that is active and passive absorption of water. Active, which require an energy to absorb the water, while passive absorption of water means what? Because of some reactions, because of some activities of the plant, naturally water is getting absorbed without taking any energy. That is called as a passive absorption. Now, turgor pressure. Turgor pressure means what? It is the force exerted by stored water against a cell wall. Okay, means what? Whenever water absorbed by the plant cell, that water is getting stored into the cell, and because of this stored water, this particular water exerts some force on the cell wall. Okay, and this is called as an turgor pressure. Second one, diffusion, is the net movement of anything from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration. Okay, for example, some layer of the cells are there and which is having different concentration. Means what? For example, in the outer layer, the water is coming in. Because of that, the turgor pressure is higher because water is inside. But beside its layer or the next layer of this particular cells is having low water. At that time, the movement of water is taken place from the outside area to the inside layer, outside layer to the inside layer, because of this diffusion. As there is an change in concentration, the movement of water is happening, which is called as a diffusion. Now, this diffusion pressure deficit is also important terminology, in which if some solute is dissolved in water, its diffusion pressure decreases. The difference between diffusion pressure, the difference between diffusion pressure of pure water and solution is called as a DPD, that is diffusion pressure deficit. On the basis of this also, the movement of water is taking place. Actually, this part, that is mechanism of water absorption, that we'll discussing in the next lecture also, where the capillary of what where ascent of sap and theories of ascent of sap are there, in which we are able to clearly understand this particular. But just now we are just giving the introduction about this terminology. Okay, and active absorption of water, where energy is required, and non-osmotic active absorption, which is given by the Thiemann and Kramer, while osmotic active absorption, which is given by the Atkins and Priestley. Now, this osmotic active absorption, in which water is absorbed from the soil into the xylem of the roots according to the osmotic gradient. Okay, where this diffusion, osmotic diffusion, and it reaches up to the endodermis. Endodermis water moves through the passage cell and water reaches to the pericycle and it becomes turgid and their DPD is decreased. Okay, and this is the last step where the water is drawn into the xylem. Means what? In the first slide, second slide, we have discussed these layers. Okay, when the water moves into this epidermis, here the concentration of the cells is getting increased, the turgor pressure is increases, then there is a difference between this outer layer, that is epidermis, and cortex. Cortex is having low water as compared to the epidermis. So this water, because of this diffusion pressure deficit and increased turgor pressure, it moves into the cortex. Again, cortex are getting filled by this water and solutes which are coming in from this epidermis, and then again there is a difference between the cortex and pericycle, so that the movement, the water which comes into the pericycle from the cortex, and like this it goes up to this xylem, it reaches up to this xylem, and through this xylem it goes to the other cells also up to the tip region of the plantlet. Okay, this is because of the osmotic active absorption. In the non-osmotic active absorption, the water is absorbed against the osmotic gradient. Okay, sometimes it is also observed that there is an osmotic pressure difference is also responsible for this non-osmotic active absorption. Okay, where the OP of soil water is higher than the cell sap. Okay, means what? This osmotic pressure which is higher of the soil as compared to the epidermis. That's why it always move from higher concentration to the lower concentration, and that's why this water from the soil is enters into the epidermis. This is the reason behind this non-osmotic active absorption. And in the last point, that is passive absorption. Okay, passive absorption of the water is nothing but the mainly because of the transpiration, and transpiration means what? Loss of the water from the water leaf area, bark area, okay, in the form of water. This is the transpiration, and where the loss of water is takes place, and because of this loss of water there is an tension getting formed in the region of the xylem of leaves, and this tension is transmitted to water in xylem of the roots through the xylem of the stem, and water rises upward to reach the transpiring surfaces. Okay, transpiration is the loss of water, and which is mainly happening through the leaf area, bark area. There this water deficiency is happening, or deficit of the water is takes place, and which is indicating that we need water. This tension, okay, this tension is getting created in the xylem of the leaf area, and because of this tension the movement of the water from the root area to the leaf xylem is takes place, and this is mainly happening because of the passive because of transpiration and that's why it is called as a passive absorption of water. As many as water is loosed in the form of transpiration, that much water is absorbed by that particular responsible cells, that is xylem, and this cycle is rotating, or this cycle is happening again and again. Water will absorb the because of the transpiration will happen, again water deficit will be there, again water is absorbed by the cells. This process is happening again and again, so that this absorption of water is take place, and this movement as the water is got absorbed, it will move through this apoplastic pathway, symplastic pathway, and transmembrane pathway, and the process of water absorption will completed. And important of questions which are asked on this topic, that are what are the different, first of all, what is water absorption or absorption of water? Secondly, what are the important pathways of water? And third one, explain in brief about structure of a root, in which you need to explain the epidermis, cortex, endodermis, pericycle, xylem, and phloem. Okay, so all this you need to explain. Thank you, and watch all the lectures seriously, follow the notes, and if you have any doubts, kindly raise your doubts on our WhatsApp group, or you may contact me directly. Thank you. See you in the next lecture.